We're so incredibly used to this narrative that football absolutely has to be about beautiful, flowing, attacking possession. It's the pure ice of the game. But what happens when you introduce the pragmatic, defensive fire of a single tactical mastermind? A guy who came in and literally broke the game as we knew it. Welcome to Footballing. Today we're diving into an explainer on one of the most fascinating minds in the history of the sport. We're going to look at his biggest victories, his psychological management, and his massive tactical evolution. Let's get right into it and look at the ultimate disruptor.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. It is the ultimate underdog story. How does a guy who peaked as an amateur player in the second division, with absolutely zero top-flight playing experience, manage to completely shatter the elite European football establishment? How in the world do you command the respect of world-class superstars when you've never even worn the boots at their level?
Well, let's start with Section 1, the making of a mastermind.
To really get this manager, we've got to look at where he started. Mourinho was incredibly self-aware. He realized super early on that his physical playing talent just wasn't going to take him to the top. So he makes this highly conscious choice to rely entirely on his intellect. It's such an unlikely yet perfectly linear climb. He starts out as a young PE teacher, literally making meticulously detailed scouting reports for his dad. From there, he catches a huge break as a translator for the legendary Bobby Robson at Sporting CP. But Robson quickly figures out that Mourinho's footballing brain is just on another level, making him an absolutely indispensable assistant. That journey takes him all the way to Barcelona under Robson and Louis van Gaal, setting the stage for a Champions League victory just a few short years later.
There's actually this crazy story from his Barcelona days. Mourinho was offered a head coaching job back in Portugal at Braga, and he desperately wanted to take it. But his dad steps in and just says, "Tem juízo, use your head." He told him to reject the offer, stay at Barcelona, and soak up exactly what it takes to manage world-class players. Man, what a masterstroke in patience.
Moving right along to Section 2, Porto's Miracle and Mind Games. So picture this. It's 2002. Mourinho rocks up at Porto, inheriting a squad that he bluntly called their worst team in over 2 generations. The club is in total crisis, but he steps in, gives in this iconic, stoic look, and audaciously promises the fans they'll be champions in his first full season. Talk about confidence, right? To pull it off, he didn't just tweak the tactics, he overhauled the entire culture. He immediately revamped their training with heavy scientific precision, designing every drill down to the absolute last detail. But more importantly, he instilled what the Portuguese call raça. He commanded such deep loyalty that players were literally willing to die for a tackle or totally collapse on the pitch for a counterattack. To them, he wasn't just a manager. The guy was a prophet.
And this intense culture, it laid the groundwork for some brilliant, almost Machiavellian psychological warfare. Look at the 2004 Champions League semifinal against Deportivo. They were a hugely physical team. Mourinho notices 7 of their players are 1 yellow card away from missing the final. So what does he do? He explicitly tells his players to spend the entire match whispering to their opponents, just casually reminding them that 1 bad foul ruins their absolute dream. The mind games worked flawlessly. The Deportivo players second-guessed themselves. They hesitated, and Porto advanced.
The payoff for these mind games was historic. I mean, Porto didn't just win, they pulled off a literal miracle. They broke the Portuguese points record. They went on a 27-match unbeaten run. Over in Europe, they completely defied the odds, knocking out heavyweights like Manchester United and Lyon before just ruthlessly crushing Monaco 3-0 on the counterattack in the final. And get this, since that day in 2004, no other team outside Europe's top 5 leagues has won the Champions League. It's the ultimate underdog success story.
Which brings us to Section 3, Chelsea and tactical supremacy. Having totally conquered Europe with Porto, Mourinho wanted a new challenge. So, literally 3 days after lifting the Champions League trophy, he arrives on the blue side of London, bringing this unmatched swagger to fundamentally disrupt English football. You simply cannot talk about Mourinho without talking about his introductory press conference. With just 1 sentence, he instantly established supreme confidence and complete psychological dominance in the Premier League. He wasn't just another manager coming to England. No, he was the special one.
But look, it wasn't just talk. The tactical evolution he brought was undeniable. At the time, the standard English formation was a very flat 4-4-2, but Mourinho, he introduces this incredibly fluid 4-3-3. By dropping Claude Makelele in as a deep-lying defensive midfielder behind 2 other central players, Mourinho guaranteed a constant 3 versus 2 numerical advantage right in the middle of the pitch. If you tried to press Makelele, someone else was wide open. If you didn't, he just sat there and dictated the entire game. It was a literal tactical checkmate. Oh, and the lengths he would go to for his team, absolutely legendary. Get a load of this story. After being slapped with a stadium ban by UEFA during a massive Champions League quarterfinal against Bayern Munich, Mourinho actually snuck into the Chelsea dressing room hours before kickoff just to give his pre-match and halftime talks. And how did he escape without getting caught? They wheeled him out of the stadium hidden inside a laundry basket. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. That is pure, unyielding dedication.
Let's jump into Section 4, Inter Milan's historic treble.
So Mourinho leaves Chelsea as their most successful manager ever and heads over to Italy. The situation at Inter Milan was super unique. They were already completely dominating the domestic league, winning it year after year. But in Europe, they carried some really deep psychological scars from consecutive early exits. They desperately needed a savior. So how do you cure a massive mental block like that? You build a siege mentality. Mourinho clears out the deadwood from the squad and intentionally turns himself into a human lightning rod. He waged an absolute war on the Italian press. He fought the referees. He masterfully forged this intense us-versus-the-world belief right inside the locker room. By soaking up all the media pressure and controversy himself, his players were finally free to just go out and perform without any fear.
And that kind of psychology, it forged an intense, visceral loyalty. Playmaker Wesley Sneijder literally said he would kill and die for him. Midfielder Dejan Stankovic said he would have thrown himself into a fire for Mourinho's tactics. This wasn't just a football team anymore, guys. It was an army ready to go to war for their commander.
This fierce mentality was paired with what might honestly be the greatest transfer window masterstroke of his entire career. Check this out. He takes his absolute star striker, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and flips him to Barcelona. In exchange, Inter gets Samuel Eto'o, a reported £35 million, and they use those exact funds to secure the final missing puzzle piece, Wesley Sneijder from Real Madrid. It was a stroke of absolute genius that perfectly, and I mean perfectly, balanced the squad.
And that balanced squad, it led to the legendary 2010 Champions League semifinal against Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, arguably the greatest attacking team on the planet at the time. Down to just 10 men for over an hour, Mourinho busts out a pure, suffocating 4-5-1 defensive shape. They literally parked a wall in front of the goal, totally sacrificing possession to completely neutralize Barcelona. Inter ended up losing the match 1-0 on the night, but won the tie on aggregate. Mourinho famously called it the most beautiful defeat of my life. Inter then went on to win the Champions League, locking down an unprecedented Italian treble.
All right, on to Section 5, Madrid's counterattacking machine. After totally conquering Italy, the ultimate boss battle awaited. Mourinho was hired by Real Madrid with one very specific, very massive mandate: overthrow Barcelona's total grip on Spanish and European football. He had to beat Guardiola again, but this time across an exhausting 38-game league season. Now, at Madrid, he didn't just use a defensive wall. He built this incredibly fluid, lethal 4-2-3-1 counterattacking machine. You had Xabi Alonso and Sami Khedira holding down the midfield, Mesut Ozil operating as the creative hub in rapid transitions, Karim Benzema dropping deep as a false nine to yank defenders out of position, which created these massive gaping holes for Cristiano Ronaldo to ruthlessly exploit. They could go from deep defense to storing a goal in mere seconds. Blink and you'd literally miss it.
You want to know what the results were? 121. That's not a typo. That is the actual number of goals Real Madrid scored in the 2011-2012 La Liga season under Mourinho. They absolutely shattered the points record by securing 100 points, finishing a full 9 points clear of Barcelona. It wasn't just a victory, it was sheer, overwhelming statistical dominance.
Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 6, Legacy of the Special One.
When we step back and really synthesize this crazy journey across Porto, Chelsea, Inter Milan, and Real Madrid, we have to pinpoint exactly what José Mourinho's lasting imprint on the sport truly is. To do that, we actually need to redefine the term parking the bus. People toss that phrase around as a derogatory term for boring, negative, anti-football, but as you've seen in this explainer, it was actually a brilliant, deeply calculated weapon. It was a highly organized defensive tactic designed to soak up pressure, totally frustrate technically superior opponents, and then strike them ruthlessly on the transition. It was pragmatic problem-solving at its absolute finest.
Which leads us perfectly to his core philosophy. Talent is not the only way to win matches. Time and time again, Mourinho proved that rigorous organization, deep tactical intelligence, and an unyielding, unbreakable psychology can completely topple pure technical skill. He didn't always have the most naturally gifted squads on the pitch. but he always found a way to win. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. As the game continues to heavily evolve towards possession and high-pressing systems everywhere you look, is pragmatic genius still the ultimate blueprint for underdog success? When the chips are totally down, as a masterfully parked bus and an army of players willing to literally die for their manager, the real secret to breaking football? Thank you so much for joining us on Footballing for this explainer. Keep questioning the tactics, and we'll see you next time.